This is Daybreak. This section, we review the papers, local and international. And we have here in the studio Dr. Constance Ikoko, analyst, journalist, and political commentator. Glad to have you this morning.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
So good.
And good morning, Nkechi.
Good morning, Dr.
I hope it's a good morning to you or for you.
We're here, we're alive. So
Right. Very early in the day. To review the papers with us today, we have Eniola Akinkwuotu. He is the Chief International Correspondent of the Africa Report. Eniola, welcome to the program. He's not with us yet. All right, he'll be joining us shortly. Maybe there are some technical difficulties in the offsite studio. Is he with us? Okay. Okay, so we'll begin with this day newspaper. In this day, federal government launches $500 million FX-denominated local bond. Offer opens on Monday. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, said this is a milestone. It's a step towards attracting both local and international investors. It's also an effort to attract foreign currency held by Nigerians abroad, as well as other international investors who believe in the macroeconomic reform initiatives of the government. Well, this is a new one. We're seeing a focus on raising money on dollar funding to stabilize the exchange rate, which is critical for the overall stability of the economy. While this is a loan, it's also an opportunity for domiciliary account holders to make an investment. It's about dollar liquidity that the government needs. They need foreign currency. Isn't it, Eniola?
It's a novel approach. I think this is the first time that Nigeria is doing this locally. And of course, there are a lot of conditionalities to it, but there are less conditionalities than when you try to raise Euro bonds, for instance. But I think what the government should be targeting more is FDIs. FDIs bring in more funds and create more stability in the system and also create jobs in the process. The Nigerian government can also do foreign investments like what Qatar does. You know, Qatar invests in so many other countries through their sovereign wealth fund, which then brings in returns for them. Qatar has investments in Harrods, they have in a few football clubs, you know, they have in Volkswagen, they have in so many companies too. Nigeria can also do that as well. I mean, but this is a good initiative anyway. It's better than, I personally think it's better than Eurobond, at least from what I read, because it has less conditionalities. And you know that Nigeria brings in about Nigerians in the diaspora remit about $20 billion into the system yearly. So you can have them, bringing this into, Nigeria tapping from this as well. So in a way, it's good. But I think we need to rely less on loans going forward, though.
I mean, now that you mentioned the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we do have one. I remember that during former President Olusegun Obasanjo, I think that was when a Sovereign Wealth Fund was set up. It was initiated by then Finance Minister Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and the pioneer chairman was excellent. There was a worldwide hunt for a head of the agency. They got one. They did a good job. I don't know whether, well, it still exists, but it seems like it hasn't done as well as it did under President Obasanjo, because there have been the usual interventions by government officials, a change of the head of the agency and what they have for the country, the staff, people trying to make sure that personal relatives become a staff of the organization. I don't know if you have any insight into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Eniola.
So I'm getting some feedback there. Well, Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund has not increased in recent years. Unlike places like Qatar, where you have how much is their sovereign wealth fund again? It's billions, I think $500 billion. That was why Tinubu even visited there ahead of Ramadan this year. Going to meet them, asking them to please, come and invest in Nigeria. This is a country that, as at that time, Nigeria's GDP was even higher than it. But they've been able to manage their sovereign wealth fund very, very, very well. Unfortunately, Nigeria's own has been on the decline. I don't have the exact figure offhand currently, but the last time I checked, it was very, very, very low. The only thing that made it, come up a bit was when I think Abacha loot was paid into it or so. So we're not doing very well in that regard. We have our foreign reserves are still very low. Our revenue generation too is still low compared to our size and compared to our needs. I think if we can get more investments into the country, boost our reserves, I think we might be able to also it will reflect on our sovereign wealth fund too.
So this bond, this $500 million FX bond, it's going to be a 5-year bond, according to information. It will be listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and indications are that the government could raise as much as $2 billion. I mean, it's a loan, but they have been innovative in this area, Andy.
Yeah, he's called it, Wallet has called it transformative, the first of its kind. And the general idea, the whole idea is to attract foreign investment into Nigeria, attract even foreign dollars from those Nigerians abroad who are abroad or who have businesses, and of course attract foreign companies plus Nigerian companies to get into this package. It's interesting. The government is thinking. One hopes that, of course, stabilize the naira, and reduce so much. Do you call it tension or so on the naira? It's a good one. We hope that it all works out. You were talking about sovereign national fund. I mean, I remember
sovereign wealth fund.
Sovereign wealth fund. I remember that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was asking then the governors, let's save money into that fund. But then, of course, the governors wanted rather to
that one was the excess crude account. So she wanted them to save any money that was above the budgeted oil revenue, to put that money away in the excess crude account. And the governors, a lot of them didn't want it. They even went to court against President Obasanjo to say that was not legal. It was not in the constitution.
To save that money. Well, we'll watch and see. One could say, okay, the government is thinking that they're doing, like they said, transformative, first of its kind. And it says because, again, this way of the continent, that the continent does not find it easy to raise these funds in the international market. So Nigeria is now taking this bold step, which, of course, Nigeria is called the giant of Africa, which is interesting. And we see how that affects the economy of Nigeria, the stability of the naira, and what have you.
And Nkechi, you see, there is a lot of talk about the diaspora taking advantage of this opportunity. I mean, they've always sent money to Nigeria, invested, but this is a very structured way of investing in Nigeria, and we need this foreign currency, but it will also be based on trust, because there are two different things when you send money to relations and when you put it in a government bond.
Yes, definitely. I think this initiative really is about providing that liquidity and also reducing capital flight. The idea is by keeping those interest payments within the local economy, Nigeria might then start to sort of stabilize from what we're having with the, one can call it, its erratic exchange rate. But also the government is then essentially betting that tapping into that financial creativity, they are leveraging the Securities and Exchange Commission, the banking sector, obviously investment bankers, to sort of pull off a game-changing move. And where it's interesting that you've talked about the bond also aiming to attract that foreign currency that are held by Nigerians abroad. It's sort of a clever play on patriotism of the diaspora, essentially saying invest in the motherland, it's safer, it's more profitable here. And this is a high stakes game for the government. It's under pressure to show that, look, its economic reforms are not just a rhetoric, and they're actually doing something about it. And we'll just see how it goes.
Exactly. We will see how it goes, what impact it has in the following months. All right, let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. In Vanguard, seizure of presidential jets, presidency, Ogun government moved to vacate Paris court order. The presidency moved against the Chinese firm. We also have that story on the front page of This Day, so we can pull up
Punch as well.
Yeah, This Day, if we don't have a Vanguard there. So the presidency moved against Chinese firm Zhongshan Fuchang, sorry I'm not Chinese, Industrial Investment Company, over the seizure of 3 presidential jets on the order of the Judicial Court of Paris, France. It also dismissed court orders against Ogun State government, which led to the seizure of the jets as an attempt to strip Nigeria of her assets. Both the federal government and Ogun State government are making frantic efforts to vacate the orders obtained on March 7 and August 12, 2024, respectively. I mean, the government is thoroughly, or probably thoroughly, embarrassed by this. It's another scandal for the country. It is similar to the order obtained by Process and Industrial Development Limited (PNID) in London to secure an $11 billion judgment debt from Nigeria. How did we get into this mess in the first place? It doesn't look good at all, Eniola.
Yeah, you're right, Doctor. I mean, it reminds us of the whole PNID mess again. I've started reading about it yesterday, and I think it started 2007 under Benga Daniel's leadership, I think. And it was about this, this Chinese company coming to invest in a free trade zone. And things didn't work out. I think Nigeria was supposed to have settled these people, and the Amosu government took over. And those Chinese people, at least according to the papers they filed it before a U.S. court, they were saying that, when they tried to, get their entitlement from the Ogun State government, that they were detained, they were harassed, and they were brutalized by Nigerian security. I don't know if it's police or they just said that they were brutalized. And so they took the matter to a U.S. court. And from what I read yesterday, at least on the People's Gazette, the U.S. court actually even ruled in favor of those Chinese guys, and they dismissed the Nigerian government's claim or argument that the jets are under what's it called now, diplomatic. I'm trying to get the word now. They cannot be seized anyway. That they're covered by diplomatic conventions or something like that. And these people still went to a French court, and the French court has said that it should be dismissed. I read Mr. Abayo's statement yesterday where he was saying that it's an illegal court order. I don't think a court can issue an illegal order. So the best thing Nigerian government can do now is to go and appeal it. But let me even say that if the argument is primarily on those jets, on the presidential jets, I think that would be weak, because those Chinese guys can also go after Nigerian registered cargoes. There are many ways through which you can, skin a cat. Those guys are going to try and, get their compensation through any means necessary. So I think the Nigerian government needs to, go back to the drawing table, see how this whole thing started, and see how they can solve it. As Peter Obi described yesterday, it's a national embarrassment. Right. But I think we can come out with our heads up high, just the way we were able to defeat PNID last year.
You are right.
And so let me just add something. This issue of sorry, I'm getting feedback here. This issue of foreign businesses, always taking Nigeria's matters to foreign jurisdictions for arbitration. I think Nigeria really needs to look into this thing very well, because the argument of these businesses is that they do not trust the Nigerian judiciary, and that is why they prefer to go to London arbitration courts. They prefer to go to other foreign jurisdictions. I think going forward, Nigeria has to find a way to ensure that any disputes are solved here, at least most of the disputes are solved here as well. It's very, very important, because we're always at the mercy of these foreign countries.
Well, Eniola, you were right that this agreement started in 2007, and then in 2015, a dispute broke out between both parties. It had to do with a free trade zone to be managed by the Chinese. And then by 2019, they got a $60 million award, from the court. And so they're going after Nigerian assets. But to the fact of arbitration, it is correct that some of these companies prefer arbitration outside of the shores of the country, or on allegations that they do not trust the local processes. Again, it has to do with the contract that you entered into. If you entered into a contract, legally binding, and you want to do it the Nigerian way, it's not going to work. If you agree that it was going to be an international arbitration, it was not going to be settled in Nigeria, that is what is going to happen. They're going to go after, any asset, and that's what we are seeing in Nkechi in this case.
Yes, and on the front page of Punch, it's saying that they're also going after other Nigerian assets, I think in 8 different countries. And if they came to Nigeria basically to seek that award and they were being harassed, I mean, I don't think they have any other option. This is not just a legal issue. It's not about money or jets. I think the wider context is about the credibility of Nigeria's contractual agreements, the effectiveness of our sort of legal system, or how we deal with issues in the country. We just have to adopt a more proactive approach in when we're handling international contracts, international disputes, because this issue of having companies seize Nigerian assets, it's quite embarrassing to have our presidential jets and our presidential fleet being seized because of a dispute that broke out quite over 10 years ago. And now we have the Ogun State government, we have the federal government, we have everyone scrambling to rectify this issue. It's just...
Let me just add this. On the jets, there are 3 jets. There's also a newly purchased Airbus.
Yes, as well.
That is going to be seized or has been seized already. So the talk, when you check was, it's been almost a trending issue on social media. The talk then is, we advised, or Nigerians criticized the purchasing of new jets. Now we are in this quagmire.
Yeah, Obi talked about it. Obi called it a national embarrassment, one. And Nkechi said there that we should be wary of how we deal with contractual agreements that have to do with internationally. I think it even begins here at home. There's nothing, I mean, they say charity begins at home. If you can't do it well here, then you get into trouble, because then you won't be able to do it. If you can't do it well here at home, how would you do it well abroad? What I don't really buy into is how something that had to do with a state, Ogun State, is now affecting the federal government. Because it was between Ogun State, this problem started with this issue, this whole brouhaha started with the Ogun State government. So I don't know how the federal government has been drawn in, how Chinese has drawn the federal government into this, and why they're saying they will seize assets of other assets of Nigeria. I think we should start making moves immediately to counter that. Obi captured it well. National embarrassment. Government should be transparent in their dealings. And why we get into this kind of things, I don't just understand it. It can't be business as usual, particularly when it comes, whether it's here, if we begin to change the way we do business. This also speaks badly of our judicial system, one must point out. For them to say they don't trust Nigerian judicial system, that's why they're going abroad. But then, like you said, ab initio, they said Nigeria agreed that if there's any case of adjudication, it has to be done in international waters. But it
depends on what you sign up
that's
to.
Like
so the Nigerian government has instituted a legal case to make sure this does not happen. It's a developing story, so we'll be bringing you more news on that.
And they shouldn't be allowing this to happen at all.
Well, abide by your contractual obligations. Do things the right way. And before you sign that dot, before you append your signature, then make sure you read and see what's in it. If you don't want it, if you do not agree, then don't sign it. Well, let's move on to New Telegraph. In New Telegraph, MPOX, NCDC places Lagos, Abuja, others on red alert as Nigeria records 39 cases. Nigeria Center for Disease Control also says, NCDC also says other states, Kano, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Adamawa, Taraba, Enugu are on red alert. So far, there are 2,863 confirmed cases and 517 deaths reported across 13 African countries. The 39 confirmed in Nigeria were recorded in these states: Bayelsa 5, Cross River 5, Ogun 4, Lagos 4, Ondo 3, Ebonyi 3, FCT, as well as 33 other states. The other information is that rodents, squirrel, and monkeys are suspected to play a part in transmission. And animal-to-animal transmission may occur by direct contact with blood and bodily fluids. It's an emergency indeed. Precaution and awareness is key to stem the spread of this disease. One of the ways of prevention, according to the NCDC, is avoiding contact with animals that could harbor the virus, including sick or dead animals. An emergency indeed, Daniela.
And this is not the first time that we're having monkeypox in Nigeria. I assume that we already, our medical sectors, they're already very experienced with handling such. We're able to overcome Ebola, overcame COVID-19, and so many others. So, but I think it also reflects how bad Nigeria's, not just Nigerian healthcare system, but Nigerian behavior is. Immediately after COVID-19, you stop seeing hand sanitizers all over the place. You don't see people, the hygiene aspect that the habits that we imbibed during COVID-19, it has just gone away. People have just thrown it away, and that's why you're seeing so many outbreaks here and there. We had cholera too, some 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't think it's over yet, but at least it's reduced. So we still have a very, very weak healthcare system, and we're supposed to have used the COVID-19 experience to, sort of build up our health system, for such future outbreaks. But unfortunately, the moment one outbreak has been declared over, everybody just goes back to sleep again. This issue of monkeypox, I think at the time when it broke out the first time, they were saying that we need to reduce the way we eat monkeys and the way we eat bushmeat and all that. I think there was a lot of awareness, but after the outbreak, just subsided, and we went back to our old ways again. So I think it's an opportunity now again for us to build our healthcare system very well, because you see that Nigeria is on the list of every negative statistics as far as healthcare sector is concerned. Nigeria is on it. Anytime that there's an outbreak anywhere, most of the time it gets to Nigeria too. So we need to, build up. So I think now we need to start doing contact tracing here and there and try to, seclude those who already have it so that it doesn't spread any further.
There's more information from the NCDC. See, it says ensure that all animal products are properly cooked. It also says we should use appropriate protective clothing and gloves while handling sick animals. I mean, the NCDC hasn't been doing badly, actually. Part of the things that it has made progress over the years is creating awareness. That's their job. Making sure that when there is a health emergency, that the information is put out there, what to do, how to prevent it, where to go to. It also talks about giving information, necessary information. If you see something, go to the nearest health facility and say something, Nkechi. That's also useful.
Very useful and very, very important. Information is key, and as the commission is giving out information and basically sensitizing everyone on what's happening, we also need to look into the grassroots, the people who don't have access to television, as we're here talking about it, people who don't have access to radio, who are just going about their business. They don't even know that Mpox there's something going on, or even cholera. Those people are the people who we need to sensitize most. We need to create awareness in those sort of areas, because at this point, like our guest in the offsite studio said, we're dealing with a double whammy. Mpox on one hand, cholera on the other hand. I know the cholera, we haven't been talking much about it. It's receding now. It's receding, but we know 170 people have died alone this year from that. And so, like he said, this is another learning point for Nigeria, for other African countries. We need to collect as much data as we can, and we need to also be proactive. This just shows us the way that unexpected emergencies can just come up, and Nigeria just has to be ready, especially if these numbers start to rise exponentially.
As it pertains to awareness, I think most local people in Nigeria have access to radio and get their information from radio. So I would imagine that the NCDC is also making this propagation, this awareness through radio station in local languages as well, because that is more helpful to the people at the grassroots indeed.
Anyway, one interesting thing though is that you have somebody at the Helm of Affairs there who knows his onions, talking about Idris. I mean, he's been in this for quite a while. 39 cases, still early days. Contract tracing has been started and monitoring of confirmed cases to prevent further spread. And there's this about travelers declaring for, travelers who have been to any of the countries where there is an ongoing outbreak of mpox in the last 90 days. Also, Idris is saying that they've continued to provide healthcare workers and the public with updated guidance on infection prevention and control measures, since the surge started. They're beginning to take action, and alerts also have been giving out for places like Lagos. They've mentioned the states where you have, the numbers, but Lagos, Abuja, and then some other states, alerts have been giving out. So we hope that early days yet, that they will, get on top of it like he's doing. And
Right.
this is nipped, no more in the bud, but nipped, at the onset of mpox. By the way, it's only from monkey. It's gotten from other sources. And it is mpox, whose WHO says, for purposes of stigmatization. So you don't call it that. You just call it mpox. They've changed the name to
Right. Let's move on to The Guardian. The Guardian, falling food prices moderate inflation spike amidst sustainability concerns. Misalignment in Nigeria's monetary and fiscal policies may keep the country's economy on crutches, despite slight reduction in inflation figure for July to 33.19%. Nigeria still needs to do a lot in bringing down inflation. The July month-on-month rate dropped 0.8%. The drop is attributable to the reduction on food inflation, which has been the country's main driver of headline inflation. Very little decline or decrease in inflation, 0.8%. Not sure if that makes any difference, but it shows how frantically the government is trying to deal with this monster that's affecting everything in Nigeria. Eniola.
Oh, you're right about that, Doctor. I don't think there's anything to really celebrate about. It's like maybe your child getting 30% in school, and then the following term he gets 32%, and then you are rejoicing that it's an improvement. It's an improvement in a way too, but it's not really something to celebrate about.
Don't forget that little drops of water in the bucket fills the
sure.
And
sure.
better a cup half full than a cup
empty.
half empty.
And as you usually say too, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step. So yes, it's good too, because food was the main driver of inflation. They had statistics that about 60% of disposable income was being spent on food. So if inflation is coming down, of course, the CBN too will bring down interest rates. Yeah. When interest rates come down, businesses too will be able to thrive, to be able to see better economic growth. So I hope this is a curve that will be sustained over time. But of course, that it is related to harvest season.
Yes.
So let's try as much as possible to ensure that these prices drop even beyond harvest season. And how do you do that? By changing irrigation systems.
Storage.
That you don't have all year round irrigation again, because diesel is very expensive and farmers cannot afford to, do all that. So we need to change our farming techniques too, such that you can, have, even when a crop is not in season, you can still harvest it.
They said inflation rate is highest in Bauchi, for instance, 46.04%, and then food inflation is highest in Sokoto, 46.26%. Those are the key drivers of the protest, Nkechi.
Yes, definitely. When you look at food inflation, like Eniola said, it's been one of our biggest challenges, in Nigeria. And so the falling of food prices, however small, can actually make a big impact in Nigeria. Using 60% of disposable income on food that should be used for something else is quite a bleak situation. It's very steep. So whatever sort of relief the people can get is welcome. Now the issue here is the sustainability.
That's it.
How can we sustain? Because it has to be sustainable. It can't be short term. It has to be sustainable to actually have the people feel that impact. On that note, we're going going on a short break right now. We'll be back with more review of the front pages of local and international newspapers. Don't go away.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching Daybreak. Is coming to you from our studio here in the nation's capital, and we're live. We've been discussing what the papers are saying, but local, we'll soon go to international on their front pages. And last, we're talking about the food inflation, how that a little drop of water, can fill the bucket. Over to you, Constance.
Right. Let's see Punch newspaper. In Punch, CJN, NJC sent Kekereku's name to Tinubu today. The National Judicial Council will today send Justice Kudirat Kekereku's name to President Tinubu for approval as the next Chief Justice of Nigeria. If approved, she will become the second female CJN after Justice Maria Mukhtar, who held the position from July 2012 to November 2014. NJC also recommended 27 others as judges of state high courts. Justice Kekereku, I think, mounts the saddle at a critical time in the nation where trust in the judiciary is fast eroding following especially entanglement of the judiciary with politicians and political cases. If she's approved, she has her work cut out for her. Huge expectations there, Eniola.
It is another feat again. She's the second woman to hold that position. And interestingly, she was sworn in by the first female CJ, and that's Saluma Mukhtar, I think 12 years ago or thereabout, and now she has emerged again as I hope she's able to do very well, because Mukhtar did very well, at least from what the lot of lawyers I spoke to. They said Mukhtar did very well, so I'm hoping that Kekereku will do as well. She has a lot on her plate. The judiciary and the police, according to a survey by ICPC and UNODC, named they named the judiciary and the police as the two most corrupt institutions in Nigeria. There's another statistics again by NBS or so about the amount of money that was that went to judicial officers as bribes last year, and usually see this spike during election season. The previous time to when we had this statistics, it was the 2019 election, then this one to the 2023 election. So the judiciary plays a major role in determining who emerges as winners of election in Nigeria. Sadly, that's the Nigerian reality. And so they have to be above board. Justice Kekereku too, she's gotten a lot of accolades, but you know that she also received a lot of flack back in 2020 when she read the lead judgment on the case of the Imo State governorship election, which upturned the victory of Emeka Ihedioha and put in place Hope Uzodinma. So there's still a lot of bad blood there, but by and large, I think she should do better than Justice Kayode Ariola, who came under intense criticism for several months about nepotism in the judiciary. You know that his son was made a judge, his daughter-in-law became a judge. He saw so many judges putting their children here and there. This is a trend that Justice Ariola needs to curb. If the judiciary is to restore its integrity. So I wish her all the best.
Right. She is 66. Heavy stuff, coming out of the judiciary, by the way. A lot of stuff that Nigerians are not delighted with. But she is 66, and she was the fifth and youngest female that was appointed to the Supreme Court. I think it was way back in 2013. She's paid her dues. She knows her onions. She's done a lot of work in the judicial system. So as she arrives at this position, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on her, especially as a female. And you pointed out that case in 2020 relating to Chief Hope Uzodinma, or Senator Hope Uzodinma, who became the governor from fourth position. But a lot on her shoulders, Sunday.
Yeah, you remember the case of Bokachua, the husband, on the floor of the National Assembly. The statement he made about how he influenced some decisions that his wife, who is a justice or a judge, took, which till today nothing was said about it. And there was a conference that was held where one of the lawyers, the major speaker, was saying that politicians like to circumvent the law. Lawyers like to uphold the law. So there's a disagreement between, or there should be, that politicians should not be found hobnobbing with the judiciary, as it were, so they can uphold the law. And that's the kind of thing that you'd expect that Kekereekun should be able to do. Think about those things and make sure that the judiciary is separated from the politicians, because the politicians, they will easily circumvent the law if they can. What I mean is, if they find it possible to win, for decisions to go in their favor, whatever it takes, they don't bother. But judges and justices should be able to stand and say, no, this won't happen, or no, that will happen. We pray for the best for her, the second woman to do that, and look forward to some really drastic reform. So it's a common man, judiciary. Right. That's the voice of the common man. So we can begin to get, especially like you said, during election season, when it's doubted that there are, alleged that there are bribes and money changing hands and all that. Right.
Nkechi, it's a win for women. At the same time, it's going to be a tough cleanup in the judiciary.
Definitely, it's symbolic. Justice Kekereekun, if confirmed, will be the second woman. Of course, I'm elated about that. However, she has her work cut out for her, like we've all just said, and the torchlight will be beaming on what sort of reforms she can bring forth to the judiciary, and how cases that are reach the highest court in our nation are attended to. And so she has really a lot to do, because the judiciary, like we've said I think last year, when that report came out about how much has been going through the bribes in Nigeria, the judiciary had the highest amount of bribe collection. And so if she gets confirmed, it's a huge hat for her. So it's not just about celebrating that, yes, second woman to have this. She needs to actually go there and do the work that's cut out for her. And good luck to Justice Kekereekun.
Especially as women have to work
even harder. and when women don't really do well, it's like, they're always fighting for their rights, and this is what they go and do. I know she's going to do
well. Women always claim that what a man can do.
Of course, you know what I mean. You do. Well, let's move on to the international top stories. Daily Graphic from Ghana. In Daily Graphic, middle northern belt drought, farmers risk loans default. Food security investments under threat. About 34,000 farmers in the middle and northern parts of the country risk defaulting on their bank loans due to the destruction of their crops. This information was provided by Ghana Incentive-Based Risk Sharing System for Agriculture, GIRSAL. It's a non-banking financial institution established to de-risk agricultural financing and stimulate increased lending to the agri sector by financial institutions in Ghana. I mean, GIRSAL in this instance is acting as a catalyst in the Ghana agri sector. Continuous financing and lending is critical for the sector, and the goal is food security, which is affecting every other aspect of society. So while we in Nigeria are also talking about food security, Ghana is as well focused on food security. And Yola.
Oh yes, I've been seeing pictures of some farmers too here in Nigeria complaining about drought. I think the NIMET too spoke about it. I mean, in certain parts of the north too. So ultimately, I think we need to also change our farming systems, as I spoke earlier. I mean, if you can just get irrigation systems in place, I think it will go a long way. We also have our own. Their own is GIRSAL. We also have our own NERSAL as well, which also invests in a lot of agricultural initiatives in Nigeria with risk-free loans too. So I mean, as I usually say, Africa's problems are sort of universal. Most of us have the same problems. What is bothering Nigeria is most likely bothering its neighboring countries as well. So I'm not really surprised by this. But I think the Ghanaian authorities need to take quick action, because if this goes prolonged, you're going to see a spike in food inflation, and then, of course, general headline inflation itself too.
Yeah, their own headline inflation, we talked about that yesterday, is on the decline. I think it's about 20, just over 20%. Okay, percent. They're working on it. But your point on farmers, a bulk or a vast number of farmers in African countries, at least in Nigeria, we know, are susceptible to the vagaries of weather, including droughts and other problems as well. So it calls for modern ways of farming and taking into consideration that this is what will happen with the weather. So you have to have contingency plans or other alternative methods of farming that sort of sustain you throughout the year. It is something that happens every year. There's drought or there are problems, so you should have prepared for this, Andy.
Yeah, being proactive. Well, I don't know whether insurance companies can play a part here for the farmers to help them in such times, and the government should come in, because this is not a fault of theirs. It's a fault of, not even a fault, it's a natural occurrence. Like when you have tornadoes or you have hurricanes or you have floods. This is just a natural occurrence, which of course you may not particularly prepare so well for. I do not know whether insurance companies can play a role aside diversified ways of farming, but if they can, it will be interesting, and it will help both the farmers and the government and the people, because you're talking about food security. If the farmers default on their loans, it will affect the banks, it will affect the farmers, it will affect food security in whatever nation that is. So government should find a way around it, look ahead. If insurance companies can come in, they come in and help them buffer the losses when they occur.
I mean, in developed countries, the government plays a huge role in farming. There's a lot of subsidy, there's a lot of support initiatives to help farmers, because, of course, you need the people to be fed. Let's move on to the citizen this morning, citizen from South Africa. The EFF woes worsen as Shivambu swaps allegiance to Zuma's MK party. Fighters should be prepared for more people to follow, says Julius Malema. After taking a surprise bruising in the May 29 general elections, economic freedom fighters, EFF woes, worsened when Floyd Shivambu, its deputy president, left. This makes him the second leader to jump ship. A lot of people are saying that this resignation last week is a problem for the EFF. This news is being seen as a blow. Remember that the party saw its share of votes fall by 10% in the last elections. This is because MK became the third largest party in parliament. This is certainly a testy moment for EFF, Nkechi.
Yes, and I think the timing seems a bit calculated. Shivambu exiting EFF, now having two high-profile figures aligning themselves with the MK party, with Zuma. And remember yesterday we were talking about that MK party, the sustainability. Experts were saying it's run like a family business. It's not going to be sustainable. And you have people now exiting and moving to the MK party. And I think this just sort of shows an unexpected shift in the EFF's camp. And it's sort of a sign that EFFs maybe the EFF, they're a bit fiery. They're a bit intense.
Not a bit.
Not a bit, really.
Very intense.
To the right.
Intense.
Right.
Or maybe it's just a reflection of some sort of opportunism, but we'll see how it goes. It's raising question about their own internal issues in the EFF as well.
I mean, alliances and realliances occur
always,
all the time in political parties, but some are even saying that Shivambu may be making a mistake, Aniola.
Oh yes, I mean, it just shows how fluid politics is, especially in Africa too. You look at the United States, for instance, you hardly see people jumping, changing parties here and there. And then it's a very, very common occurrence here in this part of the country. I mean, this part of the world. It still shows how, the level of politics that Africa practices, this level of the type of democracy that Africa practices. And then it seems that, Zuma's popularity is refusing to win. This is somebody who was convicted by a court and all that, and nobody, I didn't expect this party to even get anywhere until towards the election when I started seeing polls. And he's still waxing stronger. So I think it shows the kind of people that we call heroes too in this continent.
Well, his party is popular in a particular area, not across the entire country. I mean, he was a former president. Whether you like him or not, he had supporters then. He will continue to have his fervent supporters, and that's what's going on. But also, yesterday we talked about his party on the decline as well. It doesn't look like it's punching high up there as it was when the elections occurred. Now there is internal wrangling. There is also internal wrangling in EFF, and that's why we're seeing this. There are mixed reactions on this matter. You were going to say something.
I think quickly, before Indy comes in, what Eniola was saying about how fluid politics is in Africa, I think Indy was talking about this yesterday. What's the foundation of the party? What does the party stand for? When you say a party, you should know that a party stands for this and this. What are their values? I think here, parties are created for, I want to win. I didn't win this time. Let's go and create this party and we want to win, and people start joining or leaving that party. So there's no foundation, there's no same value or core beliefs of that party. If you say A party, B party, we should know that, okay, these people stand for this, these people stand for this. If you're voting this party in, these are some of the policy shifts that you can see. And I think that's where you have that fluidity.
You remember, Constance, what Nkechi said now has reminded me of our discussion sometime when we're talking about political parties and wanting to contest or not, when someone was saying, when you go to a place, look for the main party in that area, the party that the people love. Yeah. This is not about what you believe in. This is about winning, which is, what Nkechi has pointed out. But, don't forget, we must not forget that these nations were at this for a long while. They had their own challenges, they had their own problems before they put it together. Yeah, Africa has that challenge of it seems it's about your stomach. So because you want to win, that's the driving factor for people to jump. And jumping ship in political parties is so easy in Africa. You don't get this in the developed world. Okay. What is happening is that change is the only thing permanent. Whether Shivambu is making a mistake or not, nobody can say. You never know. But again, for Shivambu to move from EFF, which is a more established party than Mkonto Seizure, to MK, Zuma's party, that speaks volume. That looks again like MK is cutting some influence and, raising some, but we'll see later on where this takes us to, because EFF is more established even though they are to the far right. One thing stands out, that MK did steal votes from ANC, which caused the coalition government we have today in South Africa.
Well, as to goals and foundation, the EFF is, it has its clear-cut ideologies and philosophies. You may not like it, you may view them as radical, as leftists, but it's what it is. They know what they're about, they know where they're going. So it depends. If you want to join them, fine. If not, you can move on. Well, let's see the I newspaper from the UK. New Mpox strain spreads to Europe as UK prepares for potential outbreak. Sweden's public health agency reports first case of contagious variant. Patient became infected during a trip, risk to UK population low, but plans underway to improve awareness among medics. I mean, it just shows how diseases travel across borders. It's a classic case of COVID-19. One person from a country gets a disease, flies across the border, and then the whole world gets it. That's what we're seeing. So Europe is bracing up for what they term an even more dangerous variant of Mpox, and Yola.
Oh yes, I mean, the world has become a global village, so I mean, this is what you see. Remember too that when Ebola broke out, we had our first case too, for somebody who came in from Liberia, came into the country, and thanks to Dr. Adadevo and the rest, we saw how it was contained and the likes. But, I'm just hoping that this outbreak doesn't lead to another round of xenophobic attacks again now in the UK. If they say it's an African that brought it in and things get out of hand, I hope they don't go about attacking people again, because we've seen that, these days, any little thing now can cause a riot now. Because of right-wing nationalism, you see that people just, blame migrants or aliens for everything. So I'm just hoping that this doesn't, spiral out of control. That's my own prayer now.
While UK, according to this article, the risks are very, very low, it says. However, governments are trying to be proactive, and they're beginning to put in place the measures that are necessary to combat it. Once one person gets it, it could spread to other places. So what we're saying is that the governments are working hard to make sure that it doesn't become a disaster, especially in light of the fact that the World Health Organization has already declared this as an emergency indeed. Here
in Africa, one thing must be very clear. Africa must start looking for a way to blow their own trumpet, propagate values that will show the world that Africa is good. Because I remember a particular situation when somebody from abroad came into Nigeria and was taking pictures here and there, and the Nigerian was asking, why are you taking pictures every stop? He said, that was not what I was told. I was told that Africa is a bush, that when you go there, you see lions and these things on the streets. So we must be wary of trying to paint Africa in bad light. And African nations should be trying to change this narrative through what we push out there. It's very key. I mean, whether Europe is trying to do what they have to do, but Africans should note this, and it's very important.
Nkechi, we have less than a minute. Any thoughts on this?
I just wanted to say that the world really is so interconnected. What happens in DRC does not stay in DRC. What happens in Nigeria does not stay in Nigeria. It's like you said, you get on a plane, you go to another country, and it just spreads. We are having vaccines being scarce. We're having health systems in many of these countries being stretched. And so dealing with this sort of unexpected viral outbreak, we just need to, the world really, as WHO always says, just need to sort of get prepared for this unexpected viral outbreaks.
And work together indeed, because it's a global village.
It is.
Here we'll call it a day on the paper review. Thank you, Dr. Constance. Thank you, Eniola.